it starts to raise questions about how valid that information is that you're reading when you pick up a book on Northeastern Native culture and history. You know, when you're reading about the Paleo Indians, or you're reading about the archaic Indian cultures of New England, or you're reading about pre-colonial Wampanoag tradition, or pre-colonial Narragansett, or Niantic, or Schaghticoke, or Pequot, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so you start to, if you have the opportunity to speak with Native people and get some of that insight, you know, maybe you'll question it, but most people certainly would not. You can go to a lecture, you go to a class, you would learn what you believed was the maximum amount of information available to you, and then you would move on to your next class. And maybe Native Studies would become your main focus, and you would still go to those professors or to the people who were removed from that culture, who had never had an opportunity to learn about the people themselves, and become an expert yourself. And once you became an expert, you wouldn't feel that it was necessary to even reach out and approach the culture that you were writing about yourself or studying about. You know, you would be going to the archaeologists and saying, well, what is the new information that is coming out from, you know, a dig here, or, you know, cultural material being studied scientifically now, even material that was taken in the 1800s and, you know, shipped to a museum and put into collections. Now, what's interesting about the oral traditions and the oral culture is, yes, there are certain differences. People were not sitting down writing in a journal. I went down to the spring. I used this material to get the water. I then took it back up to the hill where we do ceremony. Except, you know, no one was writing that because that was part of everyday life. How many of you describe how you put your bicycle away or how you park your car in your garage right now? No one does. Who cares? Everyone does it. It wouldn't be exciting. Now, 2,000 years from now, when maybe cars or bicycles are such a thing of the past that they're only studied through archaeological testing, then it would be, you know, invaluable material to advance people's understanding of what was being done traditionally. But for Wampanoag people, for Narragansett people, for the different New England cultures, you would actually find that we did record what was really important to us. So the changes that occurred due to climate change, the changes that occurred due to the movements or the migrations of certain types of animals that we depended upon for our resources, for our, you know, maintaining our populations, for providing for our families, for getting certain types of usable materials for tools or for our lives. So, for instance, and I'll tell you this very quickly, a traditional story from my culture. As I said before, I'm Aquinnah Wampanoag from Martha's Vineyard. And for us, we have the stories, we have the history of Moshup. And Moshup was a great giant. Moshup stood above the trees. And Moshup was also a leader, a guide, a person of very high importance amongst our culture. And Moshup was known to go off on his own for long periods of time. Moshup would head off and he would hunt or he would fish in different places. And he liked to go into the woods or he liked to go to the sea. Well, it's said that Moshup was doing this in a time when Wampanoag people were fighting with other people, were not getting along with other people, and the resources were dwindling, and there was problems. And so while the people were having these hardships, Moshup would go off and seek, you know, a peaceful place to sit and reflect and think. Well, it's said that Moshup, in one of his travels, he went to a place where it was so beautiful, where he saw that the resources were abundant, where the fish were jumping from the sea, where the marine mammals, the whales and the seals and such were just very abundant along the coastline. where the trees were so tall they touched the sky and were actually sometimes taller than him. Beautiful, beautiful place. Grapes, resources everywhere. Perfect materials to build houses, our wheatdoash. And so it said that Moshe went back to the people, and he called out to the people, and he said, "Come." And they all joined, and they all gathered around him, and he said to them, "I have found this beautiful place that will care for us and provide for us in every way. Will provide everything that we need. And so we just have to journey there." And so the people talked amongst themselves, and they weren't sure. Some were happy to continue to struggle and to fight because they knew it. They knew that lifestyle, and they were comfortable with it because it wasn't scary to them. And others were interested in maybe making a change, taking that opportunity to maybe better their lives. And so they were willing. And so what happened was some decided to stay, and the others decided to go with Moshe. So Moshe gathered the people together that were going to travel. And there were elders, and there were young people. There were adults with their dogs and all sorts of different resources, all their different pots and their cooking implements and their household goods. And they packed it all up, and they got ready, and they started to journey. Well, for days they journeyed, and over hills and through valleys, across rivers, until finally it was said that the elders started to get tired. And it was said as the elders got tired, Moshe would reach down and pick them up and set them on his shoulder, or reach down and set them in his arm or in his bag. And so Moshe slowly was picking up more and more elders. Well, after more days of traveling, then the children started to get tired. And so Moshe actually picked up some of those children and carried them, and the adults did the same. And they traveled for a longer period of time, till they finally came to this sandy, hilly place with tall trees. And they traveled further. And after a while, they finally came to this place, these beautiful hills, and this cliff. And off the cliff was just ocean. And they saw the whales, and they saw the animals, and they saw the fish. They saw the rivers, and they tasted the fresh spring water from the springs. And they realized this was the place. And Moshe told them, "This is your new home." And so Moshe took all the elders and set them down, and the children set them down. And they went to their tasks. They went to, some of the adult men went out and started making boats so they could travel out into the sea. Other ones went to getting some of the wood together for the fires and different resources to build wheatdoash, our houses. The women went and picked berries, all sorts of different types of berries and different resources around, and they got their, stews going so that they could feed the community. And so things looked beautiful. And for a long period of time, the people feasted and they gathered and they enjoyed themselves, and they loved the place that Moshe had taken them, and they were happy to call it their home. Well, then they started to talk with one another. And they started to realize that they missed the people that they had left behind. And so some of the people gathered together, and they approached Moshe, and they said to Moshe, "We love this place that you have brought us, our new home. But we're sad because we have left some of our family behind. And we are asking you if we would be able to go back and get them and bring them here so they too could enjoy this beautiful place and be able to use its resources." And so they talked it over, and they all agreed that it was a good idea to go back and get the people. But see, when Moshe was carrying all of those elders and all of those children, he himself became tired. And it was said that he dragged his large toe after a while. He started to drag it on the earth and scrape the earth along. And so it was said when the people turned to go back to get the rest of their community, they realized that the ocean had come in and had filled that trench that Moshe had made. And now it was an island, the island of Nope, or today it's referred to as Martha's Vineyard.